welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I am Iris and I'm going to chat with you about a big shift, one of the big shifts of October, and this is Pluto is stationing direct. So this is part of Pluto's kind of cyclical shift that happens every year. We have Pluto stationing direct at 1 degree and 22 minutes of Aquarius. This is either happening on the 13th or 14th of October. It depends where you are in the globe. And let me give you just kind of the time facts before we get into the deep layers of spiritual meaning with it all. So Pluto first stationed retrograde this year in May, okay? And that was at 3 degrees and 48 minutes of Aquarius. It's come back since May to 1 degree and 22 minutes of Aquarius. Now it's going to station direct, and we're going to be moving with Pluto direct for about 6 months. So it's going to take us into April, and then it's going to station retrograde at 5 degrees and 28 minutes. So we are breaking new ground in this next movement of Pluto to the 4th and 5th degree of Aquarius. If you have any placements at 4 or 5 degrees of Aquarius or Leo or Scorpio or Taurus, you are coming into a new Pluto transit. If you have any placements at 0 or 1 to 2 degrees of Aquarius or those other signs, Leo, that's the opposition. Taurus and Scorpio are the squares. You are coming into the ending of the intensity of your Pluto transit. Well done, okay? So why is this such a big deal? Pluto is the tectonic plates of psyche. When Pluto shifts direction, those tectonic plates of psyche shift, and we feel it here in our psyche body. This is archetypal evolutionary astrology that I practice, and embodied astrology. And what this means is, Pluto is deep transformation. Pluto aligns with soul, okay? It is death and rebirth. It is the experience of power in this human journey. Part of Pluto in our natal chart's evolutionary kind of intent is that we're coming in to ideally shed all the kind of archetypal resonance of imbalance of power, both disempowerment, having too much power, and coming into that sweet spot of power with, which is a hard place to hold all the time. And yet that's what Pluto represents in this evolutionary journey. Now, transiting Pluto is about our collective experiences of that. And it is very clear that questions of power globally are in the forefront, and especially with the archetype of Pluto in Aquarius. So Pluto's been retrograde since May. So firstly, in your own life, in your personal story, what's been going on since May? What has been happening since the beginning of May to this point? When Pluto's been retrograde, all retrogrades are opportunities to sidestep from the plan that we've been on. Now, they're really an opportunity to sidestep from ego control, because ego latches in and it gets the idea. It's like, this is what I'm doing. Nothing's stopping me. This is the only way. This is how it has to happen. I get stressed just saying all that, because that is all firstly me. It is not opening to the co-creative presence with other beings, with universe, with spirit, with soul. And Pluto brings us into our co-creative presence with soul and psyche with a capital S and P. And what that means is that we're always part of something bigger. And when Pluto's been retrograde, it's also been helping to unearth what needs to be seen. Okay, and this is part of how transiting Pluto works, or when you have a personal transit with Pluto. It wants to unearth what needs to be seen, and it wants to bring about a death of the old and a rebirth of the new in whatever archetypes it's working with. Now, Pluto in Aquarius is all in all a 20-year transit. Okay, so a lot of folks were like, Pluto's in Aquarius. Now everything's wonderful. Now we will have perfect social justice and we will have perfect alignments of power in the new collectives. That's not how Pluto works. Firstly, Pluto moves so slowly. Pluto is right now at 1 degrees and 22 minutes at a standstill of Aquarius. We are still integrating the lessons of Pluto in Capricorn, especially if you had personal transits at the very final degree, 28, 29 of Pluto in Capricorn. Your psyche is still catching up to all the massive transformation. And if you have anything at 0, first 2 degrees of Aquarius, you're still in that transit. And collectively, we're all in it. So we are still becoming aware. Aquarius is all about awareness of some of the, the ways that what society's been doing, how we've been participating in society, the social structures, what's just not going to cut it anymore. And Pluto unearths that because first we need to see. And again, with Pluto, we're always talking about the personal and the collective. And in astrology, those two cannot be separated. They're represented in the different archetypes, and they're always in a dialectical dance, informing one another. And so what has been going on in May? How can you see, if you reflect, some deep shifts calling you to a new radical authenticity? Because in its core, Aquarius is about radical authenticity for the soul's journey in this life with Pluto. What's been becoming conscious? The retrograde is wonderful for some of what's really deep to become conscious. And that usually is going to be things that were entwined with our wounds, things that are intergenerational, things that are our wounds at the intersection of our own life and something like patriarchy. It is all of that entanglement. Pluto is our entanglement. And yet in Aquarius, it wants us to become more aware so that we can move with an evolutionary desire that is for both our own growth and the evolution of the collectives that we are part of. But we're just in the beginning. Now, how Pluto is going to station direct at this particular moment is really important and also really interesting and pretty juicy. Because Pluto has been in a very close conversation with our outer planets. That is why we are living through these very intense times in this particular way. And it's been in a sextile with Neptune and Saturn. Saturn now has moved, it's on its retrograde journey back to 25 degrees of Pisces. So Saturn is kind of backed off. And Neptune is going to go back into Pisces almost a week after this shift with Pluto. That happens on the 22nd, just after our new moon. And Pluto is in a very, very close trine with Sedna and Uranus in Gemini, who are both retrograde. So this is also why this particular retrograde is important, because the retrograde cycle has been important, and now why this particular shift going direct is important, because it's not just Pluto in Aquarius. It's Pluto in Aquarius trine Sedna and Uranus. And for the actual shift, sweet Venus moves into Libra and is at 0 degrees of Libra, trining Pluto as the station direct happens. And then those first few days, Venus is going to move through those first few degrees of Libra. So Venus is also in a trine, and we do have a grand air trine for Pluto's shift of direction. So those are really important layers. And they also intensify the energy. Sedna is conjunct Uranus, and they are trining Pluto. Now, yes, a trine is supportive. A trine is streaming in the energy of the archetypes, and they are ready to dance with each other and merge and heighten that merging in our own experience. But when we're talking about Pluto and we're talking about Sedna and Uranus, there's intensity. That is massive intensity of paradigms that are taking us into such a radical reprogramming of the psyche, of what this life is about, of what the word authenticity even means. Thank goodness. Because there is a lot out there calling itself authentic. It's $1 million brand word in the social media world of capitalism. And there ain't nothing authentic about what's been meticulously curated by a whole team of people. Okay? And Sedna and Uranus and Pluto, that's raw. That's raw authenticity. It's a raw authenticity that is breaking free of how it's been conditioned to show up performing. Performing for the sake of validation, performing for the social structures, even when it might even think that it's been rebellious or it's been breaking with status quo. This energy suggests that there are deeper layers. And most likely some of that has been coming up, and it's most likely entwined in our own personal stories and traumas and hopes and dreams and intergenerational. And we're moving in with Pluto to a shift when that which wants to be known to you, this is something that speaks through dream. This is something that speaks through the stories that you're drawn to, that speaks through the archetypal resonance of radical transformation. And it wants to start coming up into life, into community, into your own kind of radical self, whatever that means to you. But it is about change. This energy is absolutely about change. It's about an uprooting of the way that we ourselves have lived with certain systems of power, and how we can create new ideas and new forms of collective effort to do this human thing called life and society here on Earth. And Venus is here in Libra for the shift, bringing in that divine feminine energy. And she's also opposite Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries, who is about to go back into Pisces. Meaning that, yes, one-on-one relationship is something that can also leaning into one-on-one relationships if during the next week you're really feeling a heaviness, an exhaustion, a mental fatigue. If any of that is coming, leaning into the one-on-one relationships that do support you. And again, sometimes that's a human, sometimes that's an animal nature. But seeking that companionship, because there is love there. It's also about self-love. Venus always brings in our relationship with ourselves. But during the transition, and it's usually, we're in the standstill now. And it is those days leading up to the shift and those days immediately after. But the days immediately after lead into a new moon, and then they lead into Neptune entering into Pisces, which I will have a different video about. So there is a lot of shifting going on. And it's deep and it's powerful. And yet it's necessary. Sedna there, conjunct Uranus for this shift. And Uranus will go back into Taurus in November. It says it's necessary. Whatever's we're releasing, whatever we're shifting through, whatever is going through cycles of death and rebirth. And there's really nothing about Pluto that's simple. Evolutionary astrology is not the astrology for folks that just want to win the lottery and that's it. Evolutionary astrology is about being on this journey to keep growing in consciousness, keep connecting with soul, with psyche, with goddess, shedding the layers, and simultaneously feeling the beautiful joy of empowerment within that's also always connected to what we are a part of as we shed those layers. And it is deep, and part of Pluto is also grief. And so Pluto is shifting direction, so also knowing that grief can come up. But then we're moving into 6 months of Pluto direct, okay? And then as we get into December, January, we're going to have Saturn and Neptune make their shift direct. They're, of course, moving towards their conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries. So we're entering kind of the seasons of the shifting of the outer planets, but it's starting here with Pluto. And also just knowing that in the immediate time, Aquarius brings us into the nervous system. Pluto is deep, deep under the ground rumblings. You want to take care of your nervous system. Just start from whenever you're watching this video, moving through that shift on the 13th, 14th. It's also really important because as we are doing those practices that do care for the nervous system, whether that's slow movement, meditation, being in nature, writing. It's a wonderful transit to write, like grand air trine. Journal, write poetry, write whatever comes to you, write without a plan. There's too much going on to understand with this mind, what is happening, but write. As we're coming into those practices that help calm the nervous system, bring us into presence, we might gain some insights there. Because this is Pluto in Aquarius, which is the sign that also connects us to higher mind. And in that standstill stationing direct, that's wonderful for higher mind insights to come through and speak what often is quite unconscious desire that's driving us. But we're in a moment for it to become conscious. And as you reflect from May to this point, what has radically shifted in your life? We've just come out of that includes the eclipse season that we just came out of. What has radically shifted in your life? What has been purged? What has been released? What feels like it's going through a level of a rebirth? And here, all of those themes, wherever you happen to have 1 degree of Aquarius in your chart, that's how you kind of want to read into some of those themes coming up now, okay? They overlap with Neptune and Aries, which is what's happening at 0 and 1 degrees of your chart. They connect with Sedna and Uranus. That's happening at the 1st degree of Gemini, right? And notice there's a repetition there. We are working with the early and 0 degree points for Neptune and for Uranus. Those are new signs. Pluto, we've been working with Pluto in Aquarius for a while, but this is also the first retrograde that was entirely within Aquarius and didn't bring us back to Capricorn. So there's also newness here, and we are learning. We are learning about Pluto in Aquarius, seeing it reflected in the collective, looking at what that's teaching us about our own journeys, and also how our journeys are changing because of the collective, especially if you have personal transits going on with the outer planets right now. This is why I did make a video about personal transits with the outer planets, because times are changing. And if you have personal transits in any way talking to these outer planets, and in this case, Pluto, then whatever is shifting and ebbing and flowing and going through death and rebirth in your own personal sphere is also connected to what we're being called into, to what we're co-creating, to what does not yet exist. And so you can also think about how whatever's going on, if you don't understand why you're letting go of something that you're letting go of that you didn't really think you've been letting go of, there's something that the path is going to emerge. And we're going to understand more as we move into the next few years. We're so in it right now. We're in such an intensity that it's not really the time to try and understand the ins and outs of everything that's happening. Now, we do have lovely air energy, and that can also just give us insight into the path. Rather, there is absolutely no control of what is going on mentally. And a lot of us are conditioned to think that if we understand it, we control it. That's a beautiful illusion. That's not true. And that's why if we've been conditioned that way, or that's been a coping mechanism, or we've gone through higher education, which usually teaches us that, we can often feel kind of sideswiped when these situations, which are usually driven by transits, emerge, and we just have no control of what's happening. Because we don't have control, but we are in co-creative relationship. And that's where we step out of any kind of victim state that does get, unfortunately, woven through into a lot of astrology and how it works with the archetypes. And when we come into embodied co-creative praxis, we are in relationship with, and we are not victims, nor are we the controller. And that is the beautiful dance that shifts everything. It shifts the framing of good and bad. It's just like when we do work on what's called the eco-self, right? That's a way of coming into, whether it's an environmentalism work, working with the climate crisis, but the eco-self, which comes out of Joanna Macy, who has passed and moved on, but part of her work, which is where, and also is of course rooted in Indigenous wisdom traditions, where we are in relationship with the ecosystems we are a part of. And when we are not fitting the environment or nature into a box, into a tax credit, into this, and when we are moving from felt relationship, it is part of us and we are part of it, and we are going to care in a different way. It's the same thing with the archetypes. When we embody our relationship with Pluto, right there, just saying that, I feel into the depths of power in my psyche and my body and my soul's journey. They are not depths that I can make a spreadsheet of and understand and compartmentalize. It is way beyond that. But I can feel it, and I can co-create with it, and I can come into different ways of being and realize that we are in relationship. And it's a deep, powerful relationship, but it is beautiful. And there is a shift happening for all of us as Pluto stations direct right now. So I am sending blessings, lots of love. I don't know if you can really see it out that window, but we are getting some rain today. I am very grateful because we are in a massive drought. And thank you for all the prayers that folks have sent for rain to come to these lands. And I am sending out just Pluto blessings for you, which is a particular type, but I am sending it out. Okay, be well.